So what happens when someone close to you doesn't just irritate you, but seems to slowly poison the air around you? What if the discomfort you feel in their presence isn't your insecurity, but their concealed contempt? Have you ever left a conversation with a friend or family member feeling smaller, confused, or quietly bruised, but couldn't explain why? You tell yourself they're just tired. You excuse their sarcasm. You rationalize the dismissiveness as just their humor. But what if you're not imagining it? What if behind the smile, the support, the shared history, there's resentment they've never voiced? Why would someone who hates you stay close? Why would they text, show up, celebrate your milestones, all while quietly rooting for your failure? The answer, Jung would say, lies in the shadow, in the parts of themselves they cannot accept, which they see reflected in you. Your light might irritate their darkness. Your growth may magnify their stagnation. And when hatred hides behind loyalty, it's not just dangerous, it's disorienting. Ask yourself, who consistently undermines you, even gently? Who drains your energy while pretending to care? Who do you keep close because you should, even though your body tenses every time they walk in? Because the greatest betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from those who pretend to love you while secretly hoping you'll fall. And the first step to healing is seeing. You've likely been taught that hatred looks loud, screaming rejection, open malice. But what if the most dangerous hatred is silent, hidden behind a smile, tucked inside a compliment, woven into years of shared history? What if it wears the mask of closeness? You felt it, the subtle tightening in your chest when they enter the room. The way your joy shrinks around them. The way you censor yourself not out of respect, but out of survival. You laugh, you share, you hug goodbye, but later you feel empty, depleted, off. Why? Is it possible that someone close to you resents you? Not because you've harmed them, but because you reflect something they can't reconcile within themselves. This is where things get complicated. Because when the person who secretly hates you is a friend, a sibling, a partner, the betrayal is not just relational, it's psychological. It distorts your reality. It makes you question your instincts. You tell yourself, they love me, they'd never do that. But do their actions support that love? Do you feel safe around them? Or do you leave every interaction wondering what just happened? Carl Jung taught that we all carry a shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject, deny, or suppress. When someone sees their own shadow in you, your confidence, your vulnerability, your light, they may unconsciously project their self-hatred outward. They won't say it, but you'll feel it. And that feeling is your signal. So now ask yourself, why do I feel smaller around this person? Why do I keep giving them access to my life? And what will it cost me to keep pretending this is love? You don't owe anyone proximity, especially not someone who's cheering for your failure in silence. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." When it comes to hidden hatred, this statement isn't just theoretical, it's painfully personal. If you don't understand how the unconscious works, you'll keep mistaking cruelty for care, envy for encouragement, and psychological warfare for friendship. So let's make it conscious. The shadow repressed parts become projected threats. Everyone has a shadow, the part of the psyche where unacceptable traits are exiled. This includes rage, jealousy, insecurity, ambition, even joy. These disowned parts don't disappear, they hide. And when someone hasn't done their inner work, they begin to see in you what they refuse to face in themselves. That's projection. When a friend, partner, or family member secretly hates you, it's often not you they hate, it's what you represent. Your authenticity triggers their falseness. Your freedom triggers their stagnation. Your joy reminds them of their numbness. You didn't do anything wrong. You just showed up, and that was enough to mirror back their emptiness. Ask yourself, whose behavior towards you changed after you grew, succeeded, or healed? Who used to support you until you stopped needing their validation? The persona hatred wears a mask. In Jung's model, the persona is the mask you wear to survive society. The polite, presentable, agreeable version of yourself. But everyone else has one too. And that includes people who smile in your face while resenting your soul. A person can hate you and still invite you to dinner. They can clap at your promotion while secretly wishing you'd fail. They can say, "I'm so happy for you," and mean the opposite. Why? Because they're attached to the persona, their image as good, loyal, or loving. Admitting hatred would shatter their identity. So they fake love instead. But your body knows. Your nervous system knows. That tight feeling in your stomach isn't paranoia, it's perception. You're not crazy, you're just picking up what their persona is trying to hide. Ask, who always says the right thing but somehow leaves you feeling wrong? Projection, hatred, is often self-hatred. When someone close to you treats you with passive aggression, sarcasm, or subtle sabotage, they may be projecting. Jung called projection the process by which a person sees their own rejected traits in another. It's not that you're too much, it's that they feel too little and your presence amplifies their shame. In intimate relationships, this can get especially toxic. The closer someone is, the more exposed they feel. The more they know your habits, your rhythms, your vulnerabilities, the more ammunition they have to subtly attack you while pretending to care. You ask, why would they stay close if they hate me? Because part of them does care, but another part, the shadow part, can't stand to watch you thrive. They're addicted to proximity because it feeds their projection. But they'll never admit the truth. They may not even know it themselves. Ask, who says they love you but always seems to cut you down when you shine? Envy, inferiority, and identification. One of the most painful truths Jung pointed to is this hatred often comes from identification. The people who secretly hate you don't just dislike you, they identify with you. They want what you have, but believe they can't get it. So they hate you for reminding them of that lack. This is the kind of hatred that hides behind closeness. It says, "I want to be like you, but I can't, so I'll resent you instead." It's envy dressed as loyalty. It's admiration that curdled into contempt. And the more they see you growing, glowing, and owning your truth, the more their hidden inferiority screams. Ask, who jokes about your passions? Who goes quiet when you speak your truth? Who forgets to congratulate you, then says they were just busy? Shadow closeness, love mixed with loathing. Not all hatred is cold. Some of it is warm, familiar, even loving on the surface. This is what makes it so disorienting. People can genuinely care for you and still secretly hate the part of you that they abandoned in themselves. A friend can love your heart and loathe your confidence. A sibling can cherish your bond and despise your success. A parent can admire your independence and still wish you'd shrink. Jung warned that unconscious emotions are the most dangerous because they operate beneath the radar of logic and morality. That's why it's not enough to ask, do they love me? You must also ask, do they respect me? Do they support my becoming? Do they celebrate who I actually am or only who I used to be? The unconscious saboteur. Someone who secretly hates you doesn't always act with malice. Sometimes they're unaware of their own sabotage. But the unconscious doesn't care about awareness. It acts. And if you ignore the signs, the energetic depletion, the confusion, the subtle insults, you become complicit in your own wounding. Jung's work reminds you, you are responsible for your own soul's safety. If you feel attacked, even subtly, you must investigate, not accuse, but observe, reflect, protect. Because unexamined hatred in a close relationship can erode your self-trust, your confidence, and your capacity to connect. Ask yourself, who keeps showing up in my life but never feels truly present? Who claims to love me but never feels safe? Who says, I'm too sensitive when I express pain? Who benefits from my shrinking and gets agitated when I rise? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary ones, because the shadow is real, and if you don't recognize how it moves through others, especially those closest to you, you will keep inviting betrayal and calling it friendship. You deserve real love, clean love, not perfect, but honest. And the only way to get that is to stop accepting the kind that hides a knife behind its smile. You're sitting across from someone you've known for years, a friend, maybe a sibling, a parent. You're telling them good news, a promotion, a creative project, a boundary you finally set. You're not bragging, you're sharing. But as the words leave your mouth, something shifts. Their smile tightens. Their eyes narrow for a second too long. Then they say something like, well, don't get too cocky, or must be nice, or wow, you've changed. You laugh it off. They were just joking, right? But you leave feeling off, like your joy was dismissed instead of held, like your voice echoed back at you empty. You wonder, why do I always feel worse after being with them? That's the first sign, subtle emotional whiplash. You walk into the conversation clear and confident. You walk out confused, depleted, unsure of yourself. You replay what was said, trying to locate the wound. But there's no obvious injury, just bruises you can't explain. And still you doubt yourself. Maybe I'm just sensitive. Maybe I misread the tone. Maybe I expect too much. But why do these doubts only arise around certain people? Watch what they do when you're happy. Do they change the subject when you speak about something you love? Do they give vague praise followed by criticism? Do they joke about how different you've become, as if your growth is a personal offense? Ask, who refuses to meet my joy with sincerity? Pay attention to the micro-cuts. They show up as backhanded compliments. You look good today, finally. They mock your ideas in front of others, then say, relax, it was a joke. They forget your birthday, your achievements, your boundaries, but expect you to remember theirs. They guilt-trip you when you say no. They frame your self-respect as selfishness. Each moment is small, but together they form a pattern of hidden aggression dressed as affection. Ask, who consistently chips away at me while pretending to care? Now look at how they respond to your pain. Do they minimize it? Shift the attention to themselves? Act inconvenienced by your vulnerability? When you're hurting, do they show up or show out? Do they weaponize your feelings later in an argument, throwing your raw moments back in your face? You may have confided in them during your lowest points, only to feel exposed later. That's not support, that's surveillance, and it erodes your safety, your ability to trust. Ask, who uses my vulnerability as ammunition? Next, track the inconsistencies. When you're around others, they're warm, affectionate, performative. When you're alone, the temperature drops. Their tone changes. Their words sharpen. You feel like you're dealing with two different people. This is the danger of covert hatred. It hides in duality. It gaslights you by giving just enough love to keep you hooked and just enough harm to keep you doubting yourself. You ask yourself, if it were really hatred, wouldn't it be obvious? But no, the most damaging relationships aren't the ones that scream. They're the ones that smile while slowly draining your spirit. Consider how they react to your boundaries. When you say, I need space, do they take it personally? When you change your schedule, your values, your identity, do they honor it or mock it? Do they say you're too sensitive, too distant, too serious the moment you assert yourself? Hateful closeness can't tolerate autonomy. Your independence threatens the illusion of control. So they sabotage it, softly, subtly, but persistently. Ask, who punishes me when I try to protect myself? And finally, ask what version of you they want to keep. Do they seem to prefer the old you? The you who overgave, who dimmed your light, who never said no? Do they only show affection when you shrink? You are evolving, healing, becoming more honest, more powerful. And instead of celebrating that, they seem nostalgic for your past, for the version of you that was easier to dominate. That is not love. That is possession. Ask who claps the loudest when I'm small and disappears when I grow. This is the psychological cost of being close to someone who secretly hates you. You internalize their projections. You doubt your joy. You filter your truth. You shrink to stay safe. Over time, you stop trusting yourself, not because you're weak, but because their presence has taught you to second-guess your instincts. Jung called this soul theft, when another's unconscious needs distort your identity. When you stop becoming yourself in order to maintain the illusion of peace. But peace built on suppression is not peace, it is self-erasure. So step back, observe. Ask yourself, who loves me only when I perform a version of myself they approve of? Who hides malice behind manners, resentment behind humor? Who always feels like a friend but never feels like safety? These are not just bad vibes, they're psychic signals. And your fatigue, your confusion, your sense of being off, that is your soul begging you to see clearly. The mask is slipping, the truth is rising. Now you must decide. Will you keep excusing harm for the sake of history? Or will you begin to trust what your body has known all along? That love without respect isn't love. That closeness without safety isn't connection. And that anyone who secretly hopes for your failure has no place in your future. They don't even know they hate you. That's the most dangerous part. Because what looks like kindness on the outside, the friendly texts, the shared meals, the check-ins, may conceal something darker underneath, a web of unconscious projections, unresolved envy, and repressed resentment. According to Jung, what is not made conscious is lived as fate. And when someone close to you has buried hatred in their unconscious, it will find a way to act with or without their permission. So, how does hidden hatred actually work? The shadow seeks a mirror. Jung's concept of the shadow explains how people project disowned traits onto others. These are parts of the self deemed unacceptable: insecurity, laziness, ambition, jealousy, sensuality, whatever was judged or punished during development. Instead of integrating these traits, people bury them, but the psyche doesn't forget. And when someone close to them embodies the very thing they've denied in themselves, it creates psychic friction. You become a mirror for what they're unwilling to face. Your confidence reminds them of their fear. Your success echoes their failure. Your joy triggers their buried sorrow. Ask yourself, whose energy shifts when you shine? Who becomes cold when you become whole? Hatred disguises itself as concern. It rarely looks like open hostility. More often, it shows up as criticism disguised as care. You just seem differently. Are you sure this path is right for you? I just don't want to see you get hurt. These comments can be well-intended, or they can be subtle sabotage. The problem is that even they don't always know. Their shadow hijacks their language. And before long, they're undermining your confidence while convincing themselves they're protecting you. Ask, who keeps you small in the name of support? Emotional fusion creates resentment. When people are enmeshed, meaning their identity is tangled with yours, any act of self-differentiation feels like betrayal. Your independence threatens their stability. Your boundaries feel like abandonment. Your joy feels like exclusion. So what do? They punish, quietly. They withdraw affection. They give you the silent treatment. They make passive-aggressive comments. They start comparing you to themselves, to others, to your old self. They start needing more of your attention while giving you less of their respect. You start feeling like you're walking on eggshells around someone who's supposed to love you. Ask yourself, why do I feel guilty for growing around this person? The persona becomes a weapon. Jung described the persona as the social mask we wear, the identity we create to function in society. It's not inherently bad. But when someone becomes overly attached to their persona, the good daughter, the loyal friend, the wise mentor, they will do anything to protect it, including suppressing their true feelings. So what happens when they begin to hate you, but their persona doesn't allow hatred? It leaks out sideways, through jokes that sting, through compliments with a sting in the tail, through strange silences when you're vulnerable, through an absence of joy when you succeed. Their hatred doesn't scream. It drips, slowly, until you're soaked in doubt. Ask, who always sounds nice but never feels like kindness? The unconscious always acts. Even when someone doesn't consciously want to harm you, their unconscious will do the work. The psyche seeks equilibrium. If someone close to you carries deep self-loathing and your presence activates it, the psyche will try to restore balance, often by bringing you down. They may forget important dates. They may accidentally exclude you from opportunities. They may triangulate, praising others in front of you while ignoring your efforts. They may constantly remind you of your past mistakes, even when you've outgrown them. This isn't strategy. It's psychic defense. Their shadow is trying to dim your light so they don't have to face their own darkness. Ask yourself, whose presence feels like a slow erosion of your worth? You begin to inhabit their hatred. Here is where it gets dangerous, when someone close to you secretly hates you and you don't recognize it. You start internalizing their projections. You begin to question your voice, second-guess your instincts, filter your joy. You shrink not because you want to, but because it feels safer. This is introjection, absorbing emotions of another as if they are your own. Their resentment becomes your shame. Their envy becomes your guilt. Their insecurity becomes your silence. And then you wonder why you feel so tired around them, why you dread the next interaction, why you fantasize about distance, even if you feel guilty imagining it. Ask, what version of myself exists only in their presence, and does that version honor who I truly am? Hatred represses until it destroys. The most insidious thing about hidden hatred is that it always escalates. What begins as quiet resentment eventually poisons the connection. You begin to mistrust your joy. They begin to resent your aliveness. And over time, the relationship corrodes, not because of what was said, but because of what was never admitted. Jung warned that anything unconscious will manifest in your fate. So if hatred is present but unspoken, it will shape the arc of the relationship toward rupture, erosion, or silent misery. And that's why you must see it, not to blame, but to choose clarity over confusion. So now ask, who do I feel worse around but can't explain why? Who dismisses my joy, mocks my depth, minimizes my truth? Who acts close but never feels safe? Because once you name the mechanism, you can stop doubting your intuition. Hatred isn't always loud, but your body knows, your soul knows, and now you do too. What will you do with that knowing? Begin with radical self-trust. The first and most vital step is this: believe what your body is already telling you. You do not need proof. You do not need a smoking gun. You don't need them to admit their resentment or to give you permission to set boundaries. If you feel drained, uneasy, smaller in their presence, that's enough. Ask, why do I keep doubting myself around this person? What am I trying to prove and to whom? Stop gaslighting yourself. Jung taught that the unconscious speaks through symbols, feelings, dreams, and bodily sensations. If you're constantly exhausted after spending time with someone, if your voice trembles around them, if you leave feeling less alive, that is data. Not paranoia, not oversensitivity. Data. Track the energetic pattern. Start journaling after each interaction. Not what they said, but how you felt, before, during, and after. Did you censor yourself mid-sentence? Did you feel celebrated or subtly criticized? Did they respond to your wins with warmth or withdrawal? Did their humor feel safe or sharp? Did your nervous system relax or tighten? Over time, a pattern will emerge, and once it's on paper, it becomes harder to ignore. The fantasy of friendship begins to crack, and the truth begins to shine through. Withdraw your energetic investment. You don't have to make a dramatic exit. You don't have to confront them, accuse them, or demand accountability. In many cases, that will only provoke further denial or manipulation, especially if their hatred is unconscious. What you can do is begin to pull your energy inward. Stop oversharing. Stop asking for their approval. Stop trying to win them over with more vulnerability. You don't owe your inner world to someone who secretly hopes it stays small. And every time you give your light to someone who resents it, you reinforce your own abandonment. Ask, where have I made their comfort more important than my clarity? Reclaim your intuition through boundaries. Set a boundary, even a small one, and watch their reaction. Do they respect your space, or do they pout, guilt trip, or retaliate with distance? Hidden hatred cannot tolerate your autonomy. It thrives in codependence, in emotional fusion, in blurred lines. So define your edges. Start saying no without apology. Delay your responses. Decline the invitation. Cancel the call. And most importantly, notice what comes up in you when you do. Is it fear? Guilt? The sense that you're abandoning them? Or is it relief, the quiet return of your own energy? Speak your truth, not to be heard, but to be whole. Sometimes you will be tempted to confront them, and sometimes that's necessary. But if you choose to speak, do it for yourself, not to convince them. Speak to name your experience. Speak to stop abandoning yourself. Speak to bring your inner world into alignment with your outer actions. Say, I don't feel safe being vulnerable with you anymore. I've noticed I always leave our conversations feeling diminished. This relationship doesn't feel nourishing to me now. Their response is not your responsibility. Your clarity is. Don't confuse proximity with loyalty. One of the most dangerous illusions is this: they've been in my life so long, I can't walk away now. But time isn't proof of love. Consistency isn't proof of care. Some people stay close only to maintain control or to keep you small. Just because they're still showing up doesn't mean they deserve a front row seat in your becoming. Ask, what part of me still believes I owe them access to my life even when it hurts me? You don't have to exile them. But you do have to stop letting them edit your soul. Redirect your energy toward resonance. Every time you pull back from someone who secretly hates you, you create space. Space for grief, space for healing, but also space for real connection. Begin cultivating relationships where your joy is not a threat, your boundaries are not punishments, and your evolution is met with celebration, not comparison. Surround yourself with people who encourage your growth even when it changes the dynamic. Honor your no without protest. Reflect your truth without distortion. Love your becoming, not just your familiarity. Ask, who in my life feels like rest, not performance, like home, not theater? Accept the grief and let it teach you. Seeing that someone close to you secretly hates you is devastating. It feels like betrayal. But it's also a gift, a painful awakening that returns you to yourself. You will mourn what could have been. You will ache for the version of them you once believed in. Let yourself feel it, but don't let grief turn into self-erasure. Let it sharpen your discernment. Let it deepen your standards. Let it clarify the kind of love you will no longer tolerate. Because Jung taught that healing isn't just about insight, it's about integration. And now that you've seen the truth, you cannot unsee it. So now ask, what version of love am I ready to release so I can make room for the kind that frees me? What part of me knew all along and is ready to lead now? What would it mean to protect my light, not explain it? The answer is already in your nervous system, in your dreams, in the quiet grief beneath your smile. Now act on it. Because healing doesn't begin when they apologize. It begins when you stop pretending. The most dangerous hatred isn't loud, it's quiet, hidden in shared memories, wrapped in inside jokes, disguised as closeness. And if you've felt that subtle corrosion, the way your soul shrinks in their presence, the way your voice softens to avoid triggering theirs, then you already know. You already know something's off. You've known for a long time. So the question is no longer, do they really hate me? It's, why have I stayed loyal to a version of love that costs me myself? Carl Jung warned that the unconscious will shape your fate unless it is made conscious. So if you don't name this quiet hatred, this psychic poison, it will keep shaping your relationships, your choices, your sense of self. You'll keep doubting your intuition. You'll keep over-explaining your boundaries. You'll keep choosing people who resent the very things that make you alive. You don't need their confession. You don't need closure. You need clarity. And the moment you choose it, everything changes. You stop managing the illusion. You stop fixing what isn't yours. You stop shrinking to avoid someone else's envy. Ask yourself, what part of me still wants to be loved by someone who secretly resents me? What am I afraid will happen if I finally walk away? Who do I become when I stop negotiating my worth? This isn't just about them. It's about you, reclaiming your light, your joy, your peace. You don't need everyone to like you. You don't even need them to understand you. But you do need to stop betraying yourself to earn a place in someone else's story. Because if someone secretly hates you, the kindest thing you can do for both of you is leave the performance and step back into the truth, where you've belonged all along.